I had just stepped out of my truck when I heard the yelling. "You don't belong here!" A woman in a bright red blazer came storming down the gravel path like she owned the world, finger pointed, clipboard shaking, phone already dialing. "I'm calling the sheriff!" I didn't even have time to introduce myself before she was screaming into the phone. "Yes, officer, there's a man trespassing. He says he owns this land. Lies! I want him removed. Now!" I watched calmly, hands in my pockets, while she ranted. She didn't even ask my name. What she didn't know was that the sheriff she was calling, he salutes me. And the moment he pulled up, everything changed. Beat. This wasn't just a bad HOA call. This was about to become a public embarrassment she'd never live down. I had barely shut the tailgate when I heard it, a high-pitched voice cutting across the still air like a rusty saw. "Excuse me! Hey, you! What do you think you're doing here?" I turned slowly, expecting maybe a neighbor or someone with a friendly welcome. Instead, I saw her. Tall hair, power walk, that signature orange blazer, clipboard in one hand, cell phone clenched in the other like a weapon, and a look on her face like she'd just spotted a trespasser on sacred ground. "You're not authorized to be here. This land is HOA governed, and I don't recognize you." I blinked. Not because I was surprised, but because I'd been warned. My grandfather's ranch, now mine, sat right on the edge of a newly developed HOA. When he passed, he left the land, and the headaches, to me. "Ma'am," I said calmly, "I think there's been a—" "Don't you ma'am me," she snapped. "I'm the president of the Ridgegate HOA, and we do not allow squatters." I looked around. The only squatting happening here was my dog, Lucky, relieving himself under the oak tree. I walked a few steps toward her. She flinched like I'd eaten, pulled a weapon. "Back away from me. I'm calling the sheriff, right now." She wasn't bluffing. Her fingers flew across the screen as she shouted, "Yes, officer. I need immediate response. We have a male, white shirt, jeans, probably mid-40s, claiming he owns a parcel of land that's within our HOA jurisdiction. Says it's his ranch. Can you believe that?" What I couldn't believe was how fast she moved from condescending to hysterical. But I let her rant. She didn't know my name. She didn't know my credentials. She definitely didn't know I was on the deed before her neighborhood even existed. But most importantly, she didn't know who the sheriff was. 20 minutes later, dust kicked up again. Sheriff's cruiser, 2 deputies, red and blues flashing. Karen folded her arms and smirked. "Finally," she muttered. "Let's see you lie your way out of this one." The sheriff stepped out, tall, clean-cut, aviators. He scanned the scene, then locked eyes with me. His face cracked into a slow grin. "Well, I'll be damned." Karen straightened up. "Yes, that's him," she pointed. "That's the man trespassing on our land." The sheriff didn't even look at her. He walked toward me, calm and deliberate, and then did something that turned Karen's face white. He stood at attention. "Good to see you again, sir." "Sir?" Her jaw dropped. "Wait, what?" she stammered. "You, sir?" "That's right," he said, tipping his hat. "Retired Colonel James Grant, former Deputy State Commander. This is his ranch. Always has been." You could hear the silence roll in like thunder after lightning. "So," I said, smiling, "still want me arrested?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish yanked from water. No words, just shock. The sheriff turned to her, his voice hardening. Ma'am, you just filed a false report and tried to have a decorated officer removed from his own land. One of the deputies started taking notes. Karen's face went from red to gray. I didn't know. He didn't say. You didn't ask, I said quietly. The HOA board had sent their queen to handle a squatter. Instead, she found herself standing in the dirt, powerless, embarrassed, with law enforcement apologizing to me. The sheriff shook my hand again and said, "If she gives you more trouble, call me directly." And with that, they left. Karen stayed behind a little longer. She was quiet now, fidgeting, no clipboard, no yelling. "Mr. Grant, I didn't mean—" I just raised a hand. "Save it. This was your warning." Then I walked back to the house and slammed the gate shut behind me. But I knew it wasn't over. Because with people like her, the next move is always worse. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd take the embarrassment as a sign to back off. I was wrong. It started with the courtesy letters. Bright yellow envelopes shoved under my gate like junk mail grenades. One read, "Unpermitted livestock in common space. Immediate action required." Another, "Unregistered structure. Barn. This violates HOA Code 16B7. I laughed the first time. The second time, I raised an eyebrow. By the fifth, I wasn't laughing. Because now it wasn't just Karen. It was the entire HOA board, or at least her hand-picked minions, backing her attacks. They called meetings I was never invited to. They cited regulations written after my land was deeded. They left messages on my voicemail using words like civil fines, zoning review, forced easement reassessment, and all of this over my property. The land had been in my family for 60 years. It wasn't part of their manicured, picket-fenced subdivision. It didn't share their roads. It didn't need their permission. But they didn't care. They were treating me like some squatter with a goat problem. The board meeting showdown. So when I learned there was a public board meeting being held at the Ridgegate Clubhouse, I showed up. Not in boots, not in jeans. I wore my full formal military uniform. I didn't walk in quietly. I walked in like I owned the room. Because in a way, I did. Karen was seated at the front with the other board members. Her eyes widened. Her face tightened. "This is a private HOA matter," she hissed. "You don't have jurisdiction here." I raised a folder in my hand and said, "Neither do you." The room hushed. I handed the folder to the HOA secretary and looked straight at Karen. "Deed transfer, dated 1963. Property line map. Original zoning documents from the county office, and a notarized exemption letter signed by the original developers stating, in full legal terms, that this ranch is not subject to Ridgegate HOA regulations." You could hear her chair creak as she shifted, squirming. I wasn't done. "And here's the county tax record, showing I pay agricultural property tax, not HOA community dues." One of the other board members leaned in to look. Karen's voice cracked. "Well, maybe those need to be updated. This is a shared community. Things evolve." "And maybe," I shot back, "your board needs to learn what a binding exemption clause looks like." That's when a man in a suit, HOA's legal rep, stepped in. He took one look at my paperwork and quietly said, "He's right." I didn't stop there. The next morning, I filed an official injunction at the county courthouse. It took just one meeting with the judge and a 10-minute hearing for the ruling to land. Ridgegate HOA has no authority or jurisdiction over the land described in Parcel 42B, otherwise known as the Grant Ranch. But the real blow came when I requested the HOA's board communications through a public records request. And what I found? Emails. Dozens. From Karen, to the board, to lawyers, even to local businesses. And they were damning. One read, "He's not like us. He's old school. Probably thinks his boots give. To him authority." Another said, "We need to make him miserable until he gives up. If we pressure the zoning office, maybe we can break him." I printed every one of them. I didn't need to post them online. I didn't need to scream on Facebook. All I did was bring a printed packet to the next HOA open meeting and hand it to every homeowner present. The looks on their faces: disbelief, embarrassment, rage. Karen tried to defend herself, of course. "It's been taken out of context. I was just trying to maintain community standards." But one of the other residents stood up and said, "You mean like calling him a squatter? Or telling people he's a threat to our values?" The silence was suffocating. As I walked back to my truck, Karen ran after me. She was shaking, actually shaking. "You think this is over? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You don't belong here." I paused at my truck door. "No, Karen, I do belong here. You're just realizing you don't control everything." Then I drove off. But I knew, deep in my gut, that wasn't the last of her. Because Karen's next move wasn't just against me. It was against my land, my animals, and my livelihood. A white government truck rolled down my private road like it had every right to be there. On the side, County Animal Services. 2 officers stepped out. One older guy with a clipboard, one younger woman scanning the barn like it was a crime scene. The older one tipped his cap. "Sir, we got an anonymous complaint. Says there's neglected livestock, unsafe fencing, and possible illegal breeding on the premises." I nearly choked. "Illegal breeding?" He nodded, apologetically. "We're required to inspect. Sorry, it's protocol." I didn't have to ask who filed it. Karen was the only one on a crusade against me with this level of absurdity. But I didn't argue. I let them in. Walked them through every stall, every pen, every pasture. I showed them vet records, vaccination logs, feed receipts, breeding permits. When we got to the horses, the younger officer actually smiled. "These animals are in better shape than my own dog. Who filed this again?" By the time they left, not only had I passed inspection, they gave me a written commendation. This ranch maintains excellent animal welfare standards. Complaint deemed unfounded. But I wasn't done, because now she'd come after my animals. She wanted to hit me where it hurt, not with legal tricks, but with slander. And I knew just how to respond. I went public. And it spread like fire. That evening, I wrote a detailed post on the local community page. I didn't name her. I didn't have to. The town already knew. I posted, "Today, animal control was called to my ranch. They found nothing but healthy animals, clean barns, and proper paperwork. Someone's trying to weaponize our community resources out of spite. I've lived here all my life. I won't be bullied. Let's stand up for truth and call out abuse when we see it." The post exploded. Comments rolled in. People from town, neighbors, local business owners, even former HOA members, all chimed in. "Karen's been out of control for years. She threatened my kid for putting a swing in the front yard. She fined my mother for having a wind chime." Then came the stories. Someone posted screenshots, actual HOA board chat leaks, showing Karen bragging about calling animal control. If the law won't stop him, maybe the smell will. Boom. That was it. Someone, I still don't know who, started a petition. Motion to remove Karen from the Ridgegate HOA board. It gathered 300 signatures in 2 days. By the end of the week, the HOA was forced to hold a special election. Karen's supporters tried to spin it as a witch hunt, but the evidence was overwhelming. I didn't campaign. I didn't go to meetings. I just stayed home, running my ranch, taking care of the land, same as I always had. And when the votes came in, Karen was voted out by a landslide. But then she took it further. I thought it was over. Really. She was publicly humiliated. She lost her power. People knew the truth. But Karen doesn't lose quietly. One night, just after dusk, I saw a sheriff's cruiser pull up again. Same deputy as before, the one who called me sir. He stepped out, hat in hand. Sorry to bother you again, but Karen filed a new report, claims you assaulted her during the HOA election. My jaw clenched. She what? He nodded, frowning. She says you menaced her with your truck in the parking lot, tried to intimidate her into resigning. I laughed, too hard. I wasn't even at the HOA election. I was out in the east pasture reshoeing my mare. You want witnesses? I've got 3, and a vet on call. He sighed. Yeah, we figured. Her story didn't hold up. I just needed to close the file. Then he looked at me, serious. Off the record. She's unraveling. You might want to get cameras. Document everything. I thanked him, shook his hand, and watched him drive off. But standing in that gravel driveway, one thing became clear. This wasn't just Karen lashing out anymore. She was escalating. Desperation had set in. And desperate people? They don't play by any rules. Because her next move was going to cross a line. One that could change everything. It happened at 2:14 a.m. The motion sensor tripped first. A quiet ping on my phone. I was already half awake. Ever since the deputy warned me, I hadn't been sleeping easy. I opened the app, and there she was. Karen. On my land, holding a flashlight in one hand and a pair of bolt cutters in the other. She was trying to cut through my back pasture gate, the one near the irrigation shed. I hit record. Then I called the sheriff. 10 minutes later, red and blue lights lit up the ranch like a 4th of July parade. Karen stood frozen in the beam of a flashlight, eyes, wild, bolt cutters still in her hand. Deputy Clarkson, the same one who'd called me sir, stepped forward. Ma'am, step away from the gate, hands visible. She tried to fake it. I thought there was a gas leak. I was trying to shut off a valve. He didn't blink. You're not certified for utilities, and this gate isn't HOA property. It's private. His. She started shouting. He's a fraud. He's stealing water. He doesn't even own... That's when he pulled out the printout. From county records, my name, my deed, my acreage. He held it up like a mic drop. Karen went silent. Then she did something I'll never forget. She spat. Right at his boots. You're under arrest. He calmly stepped back. Karen Melrose, you're under arrest for trespassing, destruction of property, attempted theft, and obstruction of justice. She screamed, cried, tried to grab his badge, but it was over. He cuffed her, put her in the back of the cruiser, drove off without another word. I stood there, boots in the dirt, camera still rolling, heart finally quiet. The video goes viral. I didn't plan to post the footage, but my lawyer advised me to, as a public record, to protect myself legally. So I did. Blurred her face. No narration, just a calm title. Caught on camera. HOA leader trespasses at 2 a.m. In 48 hours, the video had 2.3 million views. People from across the country commented, "This is why people hate HOAs." Good for him for staying calm. That salute from the sheriff earlier, now it really makes sense. Karen? She was removed from the HOA board, barred from serving on any neighborhood council for 10 years, and faced probation, community service, and court-ordered therapy. 2 weeks later, I was standing at the local feed store when someone tapped me on the shoulder. An older woman, mid-60s, soft smile, thick gloves, and denim shirt. "You're the guy from the ranch, right?" I nodded. "Just wanted to say, my husband served. Said any man who gets saluted by a sheriff, that means something." I tipped my hat. "Tell him thank you. And tell him this land's safe now." She smiled. And for the first time since all this started, I finally believed it. Never underestimate the quiet ones, especially when they own the land you're standing on. And that's how one arrogant HOA Karen learned the hard way. You don't mess with a man who's earned respect, the kind that comes with a salute. If you enjoyed this showdown, tap subscribe so you never miss another story where justice hits harder than any HOA fine. Because here at AS Stories, we don't just tell stories, we expose them.